going to hang out just for a little bit just to see if anyone joins in. And if not, we'll go ahead and get started. And this broadcast will be saved on YouTube and anybody can watch it when they're available. First up, I want to thank Derek and Peter for doing such an awesome job organizing this professional development opportunity for educators all over the world. They have done an incredible job organizing it, making it simple and easy, and also making it innovative and introducing all of the participants to new tools and options along the way. I also want to thank you guys showing up on a Sunday morning. It's 8 a.m. here in South Carolina. My son is upstairs sleeping, so I'm trying to be a little bit quiet. And I just appreciate all of the teachers who are passionate about the work that we do and are willing to continue learning at all events, which is a lifelong thirst for perfecting the craft of whatever they're passionate about. Today, we are going to be talking about change and the formula for change. Ever since I started teaching, I started as a high school biology teacher, I always had new ideas and innovative thoughts and charged into meetings and department meetings ready to change. And my youthfulness was often dismissed and my passion was often ignored because I wasn't doing it right. So about 2 years ago, I came across a session by Mike Rutherford about change and thinking of it in terms of a formula. And when you think of it in the 4 steps I'm going to talk about today, change becomes a much easier process. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I've got just a few slides that'll help break down this formula for change, and we'll get started. So hopefully you all can see my screen now. You should be a little fish with a yellow fish direction. And I think that most of the people participating in today's method are the yellow fish, just like fish. Not okay to change, constantly getting new ideas from new situations and hoping to implement those new ideas in our classes, in our schools, and in our districts. But being passionate about it and being fired up about an idea just isn't enough. So we're going to talk about how we can make our change stick and how we can really think about change in a 4-step process to get the people that we would like to change more bought into the idea. So change comes at lots of different levels in our environment. We've got teacher to teachers trying to implement change, department heads. I remember trying to implement a departmental grading policy, an honor pledge, various things that teachers talk with each other and collaborate with each other. And usually there's one person, if you can hear my little boy, he just woke up. We also have admin to teachers. We see principals a lot of times trying to encourage staff to rethink things like discipline policies, grading policies, schedule changes. And then we've got change that comes to us all the way from the office, top trying to have us implement a new curriculum, a technology initiative, various things like that with fidelity. So take a moment and think about what change looks like in your environment. And as we go through the process this morning, just stay focused on the change that you're thinking about. I heard this quote from Robert Evans, who wrote The Human Side of Change, or The Human Side of School Change. It's a fantastic book written 30 years ago, but it feels like it was written 3 days ago. It's so relevant, so I definitely recommend that. He quoted Peter Senge and said, "People don't resist change, they resist being changed." Aha moment, and I really folded that quote into the context of the formula for change, which I'm about to share. Change is a natural part of life. Humans do it all of the time. So it's true, we don't resist change. We all grow up, we all go to college, we all get new jobs, we all go after things we want to go after. What we all resist to is the idea that someone is changing us. And that is what I ran into as a person trying to be a change leader. Was I was spending too much time trying to change someone else instead of trying to encourage someone to change for themselves. So the strategy that we're going to talk about is the formula for change, and it has 4 variables. Don't worry, we won't get too mathematical here, but we're going to think about change in a 4-step process. We're going to focus in on dissatisfaction, and that's dissatisfaction of the people who need to change. Vision, where are we going? First steps, what do you do to achieve the change? And finally, resistance. What are all the factors that keep us from changing? So I said we weren't going to get too mathematical, and then I've got some multiplication signs and an inequality sign here. But just take a look at this formula. If you think of dissatisfaction and vision and first steps, they all reside on the left side of the equation. And then resistance to change is a lonely variable on the right side of the equation. What we want to think about is the fact that the forces of dissatisfaction, vision, and first steps have to be greater than the forces of resistance. And the reason that there's a multiplication sign between these variables is very clear. If anything is multiplied by 0, then the whole side of that equation becomes 0. So if we use our mathematical properties that we learned in elementary school and look back at our formula for change, if there's no dissatisfaction with the status quo, then everything goes to 0 on the left side of the equation. And then resistance is greater than everything else. Same goes for vision and first steps. So a lot of times when we're trying to implement a change, we know we have a great to be an nature thinker, so I don't often need a lot of small incremental steps for myself, but I've been learning through the process of being a change leader in a school system that a lot of people do need those first steps. So if I haven't provided those first steps to them, for them, that whole equation becomes 0, change becomes too great to overcome. So for the next 8 minutes, we're going to dive into talking about each of these variables more. So the key about dissatisfaction is you don't need to tell those who need to change what they are dissatisfied with. The trick to dissatisfaction is that they need to become dissatisfied themselves. They need to own and construct their own dissatisfaction, because the people who need to change, they need to feel ownership of that dissatisfaction and of that process. So you do that by presenting data. Now, a lot of times leaders tend to want to present data that they've already analyzed. Our test scores are this means our instructional gaps are this, and our solution is this. We do that out of the impulse to be efficient in our leadership, but that doesn't lead to long-term fidelity to what we're trying to do. Change does not depend on leadership dissatisfaction. Change depends on the people who need to change and their dissatisfaction. So it's important to build dissatisfaction in the people that you want to change. Present them with mounds and mounds of unprocessed data. Just show them the test scores. Just show them the discipline reports. Don't show them the data that you've processed and you're suggesting a result. Let them be angry about what they're seeing. Let them see themselves in the data so that they get very dissatisfied with the status quo. The next step is vision, and it's very important to have a very clear vision. People can't change to something that they don't conceive of. Your vision is your desired future state. And if you think of your organization as a ship, it can't be a place that your organization would drift to on its own. So if you're a ship going down the Mississippi River, your vision can't just be the end of the river where the current will take you. Your vision has to be something that requires an input of energy. Here is you can't ask people to change if they don't know what they are to become. So you have to have a very clear vision, and you have to help the people who need to change look at their data, process their data, and construct a vision collaboratively on their own. So if you're looking at, discipline data and you're hoping to implement a new discipline policy where more discipline is handled in the classroom rather than with the administration, you have to let them, the teachers, create the vision of a school system where students aren't expelled and students aren't in school suspension and discipline is handled in 2 minutes rather than 2 days. And you have to let them come up with that vision rather than you being the leader saying, this is how it is, this is how I want it to be, now do it. First steps. I talked about earlier how I'm such a big picture thinker that I often don't need first steps when I'm trying to achieve a vision. But I would say that the majority of people do need first steps that are small and successful, especially when we're asking people to change in the context of the very job of teaching or working in a school system. So we can't leave any of this nebulous or ambiguous. I've totally been guilty of the statement similar to the train is leaving the station and you're either on it or you're not. I thought that that would work. I personally responded to that, but let's face it, people don't jump onto moving trains. So at that point, if that becomes the only option, your people are going to stay on the train platform and they're not getting on your train, and you've lost all your ability to build a change revolution in your school system. Your first step should be built on looking at examples. If you can go to site visits, if you can go to other classrooms, other schools, if you can look online and use the powerful, powerful network of Twitter and social media that educators are using constantly and taking by storm, that's a great opportunity to develop the first steps. But the important part here is you need to provide first steps for everybody that can be small and successful. And everybody needs different levels of first steps. So when you're trying to come up with a change plan, you need to make sure that the first thing they do is easily achievable and that they know exactly what to do from there. So when I first learned about this from Mike Rutherford, he talked about resistance, and I have to hamper down the resistance, really try to reduce the resistance, make it required, make professional development mandatory, tie it to recertification. All these barriers do in order to force people to do the things we want them to do. Mike Rutherford really helped me open my eyes to the fact that resistance is good and skepticism is honorable. You want your people that you're supporting to be healthy, critical thinkers of new ideas. Organizations that don't offer that skepticism are apathetic. If everyone's just willing to do what you say to do just to appease you, then they're not really having their heart in the organization. They really aren't engaged mentally like you'd see them to do. So we should really honor resistance. We should respect that. And you certainly don't want the organization to change because it was silenced. You want it to change because they felt the dissatisfaction, they knew the vision, and they knew the first steps. So in this situation, I really felt like I had an aha moment, because you don't attempt to reduce the resistance. If you're seeing resistance to a new initiative, let that resistance live, discuss it, honor it, and then you work as a leader to increase the dissatisfaction, make the first steps clearer, and make the vision so strong that it just inspires everybody to move forward. So I'm going to back up and go back to our formula here, and then we can have a discussion. If there's anybody watching live, our presentations were to be 15 minutes of presenting and 15 minutes of question and discussion. So this slide here just summarizes the formula for change. About it in these 4 steps. You, as the change agent, you work on the left side of the equation, and then you have resistance on the right side of the equation. And through this process, I think that you'll find yourself thinking about change in a very different, more constructive way, and you'll provide the people that need to change the opportunity to buy into it and lead the change themselves, rather than the common error of mandate change. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and hop back onto the Hangout. Unsuccessfully. Hold on. There we go. So I've got group chat going here on the right, where you can ask questions if you'd like. You can ask them on Twitter with my handle at Brady Venables, or feel free to head on over to another Mad PD session. Thank you for your time this morning. I'm going to hang out here just for a minute in case any questions come through. All right. Looks like we're done here. Have a great day leading and learning.